Hello and welcome to The Good, The Bad and The Worst, a podcast where we watch movie trilogies and decide which movie's primitive intellect wouldn't understand alloys and composition and things of molecular structures. I'm your host Griner, and joining me this evening,
I'm a man with one hand. I'm here with my boomstick, and I'm ready to shop smart, shop S-smart.
And I'm Luke Morgan, and I may be bad, but I feel good.
we are doing, this is our first lot of movies for Spooktober. We're doing the Evil Dead trilogy. A bunch of movies that I feel like, how do I put this? I don't know. I like, again, fit in squarely in the category of cult hits. Conan, do you want to tell us why we should care about these movies? Is that a good place to start?
Yeah, sure. I'm happy to do that.
Throw you under the bus.
They're pretty cool. Yeah, I wish I was a little more prepared. Look, I'm not an expert in these by any stretch. I'd never seen 2 or 3. I'd seen 1. But yeah, it's these were known as, kind of almost like the pivotal cult films, like the cult films in a lot of ways. Watching these and looking into it, this is kind of the these are kind of like the penultimate low budget indie film that you think of. So when you think of people like even like Tarantino, Kevin Smith, these kind of young film directors in New Hollywood who were growing up on movies, and they were to a lesser extent even like Spielberg and stuff, but he was before this. But those guys who were growing up loved movies, and they were running around with their friends in a camera, just making little films out in the woods. This is kind of that. This is the ultimate one. This is the one that kind of inspired everyone else. And you look at, because it's just guys who love cinema. It's just guys who loved movies, grew up on these Jason and the Argonauts, these old stop motion things, grew up on these campy B films and these gory stuff. And they just go out and they make a movie. They don't have a script. They don't really care what it's about or why. They're just like, let's be silly, let's be scary, let's do some fun stuff. Let's make the swing sway. Let's have an ominous setting under, in this cabin, And that kind of went on to become, shorthand. Yeah, we had that movie 10 years ago, The Cabin in the Woods, that is literally riffing on how this movie great film. And is riffing very much on the fact that The Evil Dead is kind of, in and of itself, a parody, but also a kind of like a distilled version of sort of like indie horror. And yeah, love it or hate it, these movies hit at a certain time. If you were growing up, if you're a Gen X and you're into movies, these are your movies, right? If you were 10 years old and you see these, they change your life. You've never seen anything like it. It'll blow your mind. Whereas for all of us probably who'd never seen them, they hit different, whether good or bad. But I think they're just kind of, what's that?
Or worst.
Or worst.
Good, bad, or worst.
Yeah. But I think they kind of created this template in a lot of ways for other indie filmmakers to follow and go, you don't really need to study film. You don't need to go out and be this sort of ultra-wise cultured. I don't know if cultured's right, but you don't need to be in the industry. Tarantino was in LA and his story's a bit different. But him and Kevin Smith's the other one I keep thinking of. They just love movies. They had a very small amount of money. They had some friends let's make this stuff. And, Raimi went on to make some pretty important films, probably the most important superhero film ever made. It's his fingerprints are on a lot of stuff, even if you don't realize Sam Raimi's got a pretty long legacy. We talked a bit about this in the Doctor Strange episode, just sort of his influence with things like Darkman and Spider-Man's obviously. But this is just kind of seeing that stuff. I just think that these movies are a lot more significant. Their influence is probably more important than the movies themselves. It's one of those films, The Shadow of the Evil Dead. I think Necronomicon. I'm just going to look this up right now because I don't know, but I feel like that might have actually been made by him. And
I looked it up. It is not. It comes from a H.P. Lovecraft story.
Okay.
But I had the same thought. There's an item in a video game I like to play called the Necronomicon, and I always think of these movies, even though I had never seen them. The term boomstick, I feel like that came from here.
Yes.
Even just the shotgun being the primary device for shooting bad guys, zombies in the head or whatever. Did this start that? I don't know. I feel like it did, but I'm not. I don't know if I'm that well versed to know that that's the case.
like this is like Night of the Living Dead. They obviously had guns, and it's like, but you're right. The
But
sort
the
of the
shotgun being like a character in itself, this is the movie that does
I
that, right?
I think so, yeah. And
That and the
again,
chainsaw, I guess.
yeah, like, but yeah, and like there's kind of the gore of that, like the gore of blowing a zombie apart
Yeah.
and the blood and brains going everywhere. That kind of starts here, and obviously this is taken from other films earlier on. But yeah, like that, it's like with Halloween. All these ingredients are mixed into one sort of perfect, simple example that everything else looks at and goes, oh yeah, that's what we love, because you've taken the best of everything that's inspired you. You've made something simple and ridiculous and so intentionally tacky that there's just a charm to it. Because this is the thing that really stands out. These movies are just exciting in terms of his personality. You can feel the Raimi brothers are like just having a blast. Them and Bruce Campbell are just like, they don't care about character, they don't care about continuity, they don't care about anything but just having fun in the woods or the desert for wherever number three was filmed, just having a blast. And like, I feel like that energy is kind of palpable. And that's what you get when we always talk about with movies, like when you feel someone's passion in a project, it makes the project different. Like it makes it truly kind of one that you
Yeah.
go, that has value because I feel the creators wanted to make this rather than just this was made to sell tickets.
Yeah. Luke, do you have any history with these movies?
No, I'd never seen any of them. I'd always just, everyone knows, I think Ash, and like this chainsaw wielding person, and that's what Bruce Campbell was famous for. I'd always known that and known that it was like a cult classic, and like it just always seemed like well loved. The people that love these films love these films. But I'd never watched them. I had always just had this thing when seeing like images from them or gifs or whatever. I had just had this feeling that like, oh, I don't know if these films are for me. Um, and I was right. Not to spoil it, but
Yeah.
yeah, I feel like all the people out there that really love these films aren't going to like my opinion on these films. But
That's
yeah,
fair.
but other than that, I'd never even really seen anything with Bruce Campbell other than his cameos in Spider-Man
Spider-Man,
and
yeah.
Doctor Strange. So
His
yeah,
his career is pretty
You're not
fascinating.
you're not a big Burn Notice fan?
I've
no,
seen Burn Notice.
Yeah, that's the other big thing that he was in for years and years and years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
but no.
Like, yeah, it's weird. Like these movies kind of make him kind of like culturally significant. Because there's this, and then he's in Maniac Cop, and then yeah, he's in pretty much all of Sam Raimi's work in some small way, but he just doesn't do anything else really. He's in films here and there, but
Yeah.
People,
there's nothing else big. There's nothing else stand out. There's no like real TV vehicle. He just kind of does bit parts after, which is very strange.
I'd always seen his name thrown around as fan casting. People wanted him cast as Sully when they were going to do an Uncharted movie eventually, which obviously they went to Mark Wahlberg. After watching these, I don't know if I would have wanted that.
Really?
Really?
I got some hot take.
Yeah,
So,
fair enough.
yeah.
Okay, because yeah, what? All right, okay. Well,
He reminds me a little bit of like Nathan Fillion. Like he's kind of like he's big in the genre, but he's not. I don't know. He never broke out. Never had that big role.
yeah,
But
that's
if you know him from that thing you like him in, you'll always spot him in everything he's in.
Nathan
Yeah.
Fillion's kind of a good point to that. He's very
Yeah.
similar, I think, where
Yeah.
people who know Nathan Fillion like Nathan Fillion, and know him, but the household name. If I was to ask like my wife or someone who that is, they wouldn't know that person by name.
Yeah.
But yeah,
yeah, that's a really apt comparison.
Yeah, Conan, I think you're right in like the Gen X, because being in love with these movies, like I feel like I'm just a little bit too young for these movies to have hit me. Like for people who were born at the start of the 80s or late 70s and were kids when these movies were coming out, or were like just turning teens when they were coming out, like I could totally see these movies hitting hard. And I remember when I was a kid, I used to read this Xbox magazine, and the guys in that would have been that age, and they used to quote these movies all the time in there. Like they'd talk about boomsticks and stuff like this. And I always thought, I should really watch those movies. I think I would like them. We'll get to it.
Yeah, we'll
we'll unpack that. But yeah, it's I think I'm just a little too young for it to have hit me in that way.
No, I'm exactly the same. Like I can see everything about it. I'm like, Yeah, it's you know that thing where you see it and you're like, I know why people love this. I totally get the appeal.
Yeah.
Not necessarily for me. And yeah, I can see that all over. Like, yeah, Gen X. Because like, think about it. It's called The Evil Dead, which already sounds cool. It's got this cover of like this, like the artwork on the original one is this dead hand coming out of this like half naked girl. Army of Darkness is like this campy Bruce Campbell's jacked with a chainsaw hand. Like from what you've seen, they're ultra gory. They're like,
Yeah.
they're almost made to appeal to that kid who's like, my parents don't want me to watch this, but they probably don't know what VHSs are, so I can get one and I can watch it in secret, and I know it's forbidden because there's blood and like it's just.
It was banned in a few countries, the original one.
It
was banned in Finland, Ukraine, and Singapore due to the high level of violence, blood, sex, and
tree
gore.
rape.
Tree rape.
And the tree rape. That's the controversial part. That's I mean,
it's funny seeing that now compared to most modern
Yeah,
movies and horror. But
yeah, the 80s were like a different time for what was acceptable, I guess, in the horror realm.
There's boobs in this movie, well, the first one anyway. From
memory. Living boobs. There are dead boobs in the other one.
Yes.
So
all right, let's get the stats out of the way, and then we'll talk about the boobs.
Stats.
Evil Dead 1 had a budget of $350K, which seems large. I mean, I know it's a small budget, but for Raimi and his friends, it's a lot of money. I don't know.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot of money to me. Box office came through with $2.9 million. Evil Dead 2, $3.6 million budget, made $5.9 million. Army of Darkness, $13 million budget, had a box office of $11 million.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
that's a big jump for budget from first to second one.
It is.
Yeah, there was a story behind all of that, and I've forgotten it now. But
A lot of it has to do with Darkman, right? Like that movie.
Yes, yeah, I think you're right.
Was very profitable, is my understanding, and he was just basically given a blank check.
Yeah.
Also, Evil Dead 2 did fairly well.
Yeah. I think I really should have done my research. I'm sorry, audience. I'm a bad podcast guy. But yeah, like because between Evil Dead 1 and 2, like the first one was kind of this original idea that they didn't really know what to do with. He never wanted to make a sequel, but then when 2 came out, there was something about, and that's why and that's why 2 is like a remake, because it's like this is kind of what we wanted to do, but we couldn't do before. And then Darkman comes out after, but that's why Army of Darkness. He gets to do Army of Darkness because he's just like he does Darkman, it does well, and then he returns to that, and he so there is a whole interesting like oral history about
my understanding is that he wanted to do the Army of Darkness plot as number 2.
Okay.
But the people bankrolling it were like, no, that's too far out. The first one did really well. We just want more like that. And so
right.
That's how we got the Evil Dead 2. That was what I read.
That's probably right.
And then you look at his other bodies of work, and then it's like, okay, well, here's some money to do Army of Darkness.
Yeah.
Conan, two questions. When did you watch this? Like, did you watch this as a kid, or did you watch this as a film nerd sort of thing in high school or anything like that? And I know you have like older brothers that, influence a lot with film stuff. Were they into these films?
Yeah, so the Gen X thing directly speaks to so all my brothers like these movies a lot. My 2 older ones really do, and I think they're both Gen X. At least one is.
Gen X, they're kind of elder millennial, yeah.
Yeah, they're on the cusp. They're on like I think they're on the turning point. I think they're on the turning point. Like one is just in, one's just out. So yeah, they're in that exact thing. Like VHS was big in our house. My older brother's really into horror, so this was like designed directly for them. So they were into it. They loved it. I only saw the first one, I think, when I was a teenager at the time. I can't remember when. I would have been, like anywhere between 15 and 18.
Yeah.
So I saw it. That was the only time I saw it then. And like, I like the first one a lot. I am in no way going to be like it's the best movie ever. Like, I'll say it now. I'm not going to be like these movies are 5 stars and you need to love them. I'm not in that boat. But it's again, like I said, even seeing the first one at that age was like, it's just really charming, and I can see the intent through all of this. And again, like as a just a fan of horror, I'm like, oh, this is where a lot of you can see all the inspiration he's taking, and then you can see the inspiration he has inspired,
Hmm.
for lack of a better word. So yeah, it didn't hit me at the right time though. Like, I'm definitely not the target audience for this. Like, there was a couple of film critics I was listening to on a podcast, and they were talking about that. They're like, they just adore Evil Dead 2. They're like, they were saying, 5 stars. It's one of the best horror films ever. One of the best, like his best movie without a doubt. And they are exactly in that demographic. Like, they saw it when they were teenagers. It just changed their views. And I'm like, yeah, there's a whole generation that grew up in this movie. Like, say, Xbox magazine writers and stuff. And if you're there, in the same way, like there's a whole generation that watched Fight Club and were like, holy crap, this movie's the greatest thing in the world. And
This is my identity now.
yes.
And then some of them grow up and that continues to be their identity. Others grow up and like it, but see the actual message behind it.
That's exactly right.
All right. Quickly, the Metacritic scores: Evil Dead 1, 71, Evil Dead 2, 72, Army of Darkness, 59.
We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, probably pretty expected, to be honest. All right, Evil Dead 1, 5 friends. 5? 5 friends, yeah, there was a solo person. 5 friends travel to a cabin in the woods where they unknowingly release flesh-possessing demons.
It's simple. It's clean. That's all you need for a movie, folks.
It is. Like, I appreciate that about this movie. It's simple, it's clean. It doesn't stick around any longer than it needs to. Like, it's a pretty tight, like 85 minutes or whatever it is.
They're very short.
Yeah.
Yeah, 85 minutes. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Yeah. Look, I agree. I don't feel like the person. This movie hit me at the wrong time, right? I watched this movie in the wrong era. I feel like I don't know.
Well, like think about it. You're a man in your 30s. You have seen every. In a way, there's the Seinfeld effect of like,
yep,
this kind of does something. It seems elementary by now because we've just seen it so much since then.
Oh man, I disagree. Like Seinfeld is timeless.
No, Seinfeld's objectively a bad show.
No, Seinfeld is timeless.
Let's not get into this. Let's not get into this.
We can just debate Seinfeld another time, but I believe, and here's the thing: I grew up watching Seinfeld, so maybe it hit with me, obviously,
yes,
and now
100%.
it is my show.
That's your Evil Dead.
But I think, I still think Seinfeld holds up, and
I can watch it
and laugh more than any other comedy show I watch these days. Man, these films were not for me, and so we'll discuss the first one obviously first. But this is dated, obviously. I did not like this film at all. It felt like, oh wow, this is a really early. And when you say it, Conan, like hearing your speech at the start, it kind of made me see and appreciate it a bit more. I'm like, okay, yeah. I felt watching it, I was like, man, this feels like if my weird friend from drama created a horror film, and like in high school.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
And that's what it felt like, where I was like, it feels really bad. I feel like the acting's bad. I feel like scenes just. I was so glad it's an hour and 20. I'm very glad it's an hour and 20 because everything feels like it goes so long. Like I feel like I watch a woman walk out in the forest for 10 minutes and then run away from a tree for 10 minutes and then get raped by a tree for 10 minutes. And it's just like everything, there's no tension. I didn't realize that these were camp, right? So I came in expecting horror films to be scared.
That is going to completely ruin your experience, yeah.
As I'm going through, I was like, oh, wow, they've really missed the mark here. I was like, this isn't scary at all. This is bad. It's like laughable almost, Once, obviously, I get through the second one, I'm like, okay, I don't know if that was the intent with the first one or if they've now realized, okay, this is our thing. This is our shtick. Let's stick with it. And now we make this campy stuff and go extreme with it. But there's so much stuff where I feel like they're just like, oh, cool, we have a bit of a budget. I want to do gory stuff. I want to do this cool feature. I want to have a camera swaying through the forest 50,000 times throughout the movie with horrible sound effects of like,
great sound effects. What are you on?
And it's just like, it's ridiculous, I did not enjoy this film at all. It wasn't for me. I was just like, I'm glad it was an hour 20. Like, I appreciate that. I just
high praise.
This film, and I don't want to get more into my thoughts for the other two, but I was just like, oh, okay, I don't see what the appeal of Bruce Campbell is because he's not great. And it made me be like, man, Sam Raimi's not great either. Like I was like,
Goodness me.
I get the passion. I get when you said it, it clicked with me at the start of the podcast where I was like, okay, I can see, yes, you know what, this is Sam Raimi early on, obviously, very early on in his career. I don't know if this is his first film or
It's
one
his
of,
first, yeah. Like this is,
yeah,
this is
you know,
literally like
and
a
it's
student film.
and it's him being a fan of horror films and being like, cool, now I can make mine. But it felt like I kept comparing it to, I guess, is Night of the Living Dead. And like I said, obviously I came into it expecting horror. So when I'm watching it, I'm like, man, Night of the Living Dead came out before these, but they feel like they came out after these because they were still good films. You know what I mean? And I was like, I feel like everything's so shoddy in this film, and more dated than what I felt Night of the Living Dead was, even the first one. But yeah, I don't know. It's not for me, not my cup of tea, as Spike Lee would say. You know, it's yeah.
Yeah, I didn't love this movie, and I had the same thought of like, we've watched some older movies before that, you know, had small budgets, but I enjoyed them. Like Night of the Living Dead is a good example of it, where I kind of like that movie more than this one. Like, I was expecting comedy horror, which this movie, I don't know, the tone of this movie feels really weird to me. Like, it feels a bit all over the place. They do try a little bit of comedy here and there. I don't know that it works, but I mean, I can see yeah, I don't know. I still liked Bruce Campbell at the end of it. Like, I didn't have any problems with him. I think he's probably the best. He's the best actor in this movie, by like miles and miles and miles. But yeah, there's just lots of weird things. The tree rape scene, I think I can see how people latched onto this movie, and I think that scene is responsible for a bit of it. Like that scene's kind of shocking. And I think the effects in it look good still for the most part. Like, it's just branches and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, there's no stop motion, which I think ages things instantly. There's no weird makeup or anything like that. Like, it's just a bunch of branches and vines wrapping around her, done pretty well. Yeah. And it's kind of disturbing.
Yeah, like it's very transgressive, right? Like, I guess at the time, the movies were a bit more comfortable with it. Now it's really taboo to ever even, like, show or suggest that in film. But yeah, that idea of just like having trees commit that crime, it's like, oh, it's weird. I've never thought of it. This movie has a lot of that energy to it of like, I think you see things being done. It's like, I never realized it could do it that way. And again, I think we have 40 years of retrospect to really be like, oh, it's dated. But so at the time, you think, okay, this is a intentionally camp, low budget, unpolished film, and there's this camera like sliding through the woods, and it's like, how do they do that? And so you go, oh, well, you can do that so easily now. We know how. It's like, but at the time, that was a little bit more impressive, and even still, like, as someone who's like tried to make small short films before, being like, how do they get that effect? I don't know. And like, on a small budget in this small group, it is kind of impressive. And like, the tree scene is a good example of that. It's like, how do they do that? It's just an interesting use of that. And if you have no interest for that, like, I'm not sure how they're doing that, or I'm not sure how they've achieved this effect, it's going to have no charm. But a lot of it, like just the blood, the effects, the makeup, it's like, this is just impressive. Like, there is a real meta-ness to this of like, I think it clearly knows what it is. It's winking at you with every single moment. Like, he just walks in, he's like, hey, it's a tape recorder, plays it, it starts playing the thing. It's like, there is no sense of like mystery, tension. It is just like, this is where they know. It's like, hey, a character would say this to get to that. Okay, cool. Like, the script would have taken 10 minutes to write if there was a script at all,
That's the thing. I felt like, you said like, they're having fun, and for most of the time, though, I'm just like, this, it's not fun, though. Like, I don't know, I'm not having fun, and this. Again, I might be coming at it from the point of I came in expecting a horror, so I was looking at all that, but I was laughing at stuff thinking, oh, I'm not supposed to be laughing at this, I was like, how many times is like a very light bit of plywood cupboard going to fall on Bruce Campbell and him just going to lay there like, oh, I can't get up from underneath it. And it's like, it seemed like every time he got pushed back, he bumped into another cupboard that fell on top of him. And it was like, oh my God, this is ridiculous. Like, what's going on here? And just, it cracked me up, just the amount of, them just being like, oh, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. Like it's fine. It'll be good. We just shot our best friend in the head, and
Yeah,
like your
there's
girlfriend.
not a lot of time for mourning.
It'll be
is there?
fine, Lo. That's we're gonna sleep it off, shake it off. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. I was like, is this meant to be having fun? I don't know what was going on. And yeah, I don't want to get into my thoughts with the other ones while we're talking about the first one. But I mean, the second one is the first one again. But it's just yeah, like I can see the passion. I can see like the passion for gore. Where it's really like, oh, let me do heaps of gross stuff for like 10 minutes.
The practical effects.
Yeah. And I can see that passion in there, but
Yeah.
I'm shocked. I am shocked at how high these like movies are critically. Like 86% on Rotten Tomatoes for the first one. How?
No, I think
when Mighty Ducks is 30 something.
Because that's a bad fuck. Jeez, full of bad takes tonight. Have you guys seen a movie called Terrifier?
No, but I
Do you
know I know what it is.
You know what it is? So that's an interesting touchstone on this, right? Like it's kind of like in a lot of ways that movie is the next iteration of the Evil Dead. So it's these ultra gory, like ultra horrible gory, low budget films. The guy who made them has made 3 or 4 shorts. It's all featuring this like killer clown. But Terrifier 2 came out, I think, 2 years ago. No, sorry, last year. And it was this incredible sleeper hit, like tiny budget, made 6 million or something. Became a real like viral sensation. And it was one of those true success stories where people like, you have to see this movie. It's like 2 hours and 20 minutes of just the worst violence and gore you've ever seen.
That's the people were leaving like the premiere, weren't they? Like sick
Yeah,
or whatever.
People were repulsed by it.
Have you watched it?
I've seen the original Terrifier. I haven't seen Terrifier 2.
Okay.
But like Terrifier 1 is full on as it is. But they're the kinds of movies, they have this incredible following. And if you vibe with that type of horror, this intentionally goofy, like, and it's not intentionally goofy like this, but it is kind of silly. It's very low budget. You can see like the camera stock is cheap and it all feels weird. But they've got this incredibly, like people who vibe with, it's like with all horror, people who vibe with that type adore it. And the guy who makes it, Damien Leone, his whole thing is that it's just the practical effects. It's like, how can I create the effect of me sawing a person in half with $100? And most of the charm of the movie is like, I don't know how they do this. I don't know how he is able to create such incredible effects. And I think this is the Evil Dead is that same thing. It's like, how are they doing all this with blood? How are they creating these like ridiculous effects and stuff? And like, there's a whole history of movies like that. Of like, this movie is kind of empty outside of the practical filmmaking on display. And yeah, I think so. Like, if you don't vibe with that, if that's not your thing, then you'll hate it. And like same with Terrifier, I think if you're not into appreciating the sort of the practical skill behind it, that movie will just make you hate it. So I can't be upset that you like people just don't click with these movies, right?
Yeah. Have you guys seen Bad Taste?
No.
Yeah, that reminded me of these movies as well, like similar sort of thing.
Is that the Peter Jackson?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I watched it because of Lord of the Rings, and I'm like, that's not Lord of like. It's okay. I think I enjoyed it more than this, but yeah. All right. What else we say about this? And do you have any further thoughts? Like, I respect this movie. I understand why people like it, but I think watching it in 2023. If you're not really interested in the history and that
this is
doesn't have a lot to offer.
This is like a meta film. The value of this film is what it represents rather than what it is. Like, you watch this because you're like, I want to see Sam Raimi's first film. I want to see this low indie film. I want to see the inspiration for Cabin in the Woods stuff. It's one of those. Like, if you come at this expecting an interesting, compelling horror film, you are shit out of luck. But if you come at this as like, I've been hearing people say groovy for the last 40 years, and I don't know why they say it with that tone. You're like, oh, okay, it's this dumb line that has no point. Like, it's one
I
of those
always thought it was Earthworm Jim, but yeah, it's apparently this.
So. That's where he got it from.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there's not much to say about the plot or anything, and it's just it. I think the effects are good. I don't think they've aged. I think they look really good.
It looks gross. Like,
yeah.
It looks gross. So did you enjoy it on your second watch now, Conan?
Like it's definitely a film that I enjoyed purely through admiration. Like I was on my phone through most of this because you're right. There are a lot of parts that are slow that are like okay, it's just them in the house being like kind of making small talk. It's like you can sort of tell they're like we need to have some dialogue here because we can't just do all killing.
Mm.
Like,
But again, I'm like I really enjoy watching low budget filmmakers like figure out what they're doing because that's these movies do appeal to me in that sense. So I enjoy it for that because I'm like oh this like you said
it's
the plywood falls on his head and I'm like
it,
that's meant to be dumb. We know it doesn't work, but they can't drop an actual plank on Bruce Campbell's head.
it'd
So we just have
be
to agree.
yeah. Like I get it. I can see like its appeal as like an interesting look at Sam Raimi's career and stuff like that. But yeah, because like it obviously is him learning how to
Yeah.
make a film and all this sort of stuff. Because like you just touched on like stuff. I was often bored, like in a lot of stuff where I was like, okay, hurry up. Where I kept being like, I wish I could watch this at like 1.5 the speed and just like get through it a bit quicker. Like there's the scene where he gives his girlfriend the necklace and like he's pretending to be asleep and see her catch it.
I love that
And
scene.
it
That
feels
scene
like
is
it goes
really
for 5 minutes slow. They keep looking back and I'm just like, okay, I get it. I get it.
What a
Enough.
strange necklace too. Like I kind of
Yeah.
expected it to have do something. Like it looks like it should be a magnifying glass or a key or something, but
It's like a little mirror.
yeah.
thing.
I feel like that's part of what they were figuring out about the character of Ash is like he doesn't really know. He doesn't have any sort of taste. He just buys this weird necklace. It's like what is this?
Yeah.
And they obviously come to flesh that out later, but I thought it fits with the character as like, yeah, it's what a weird necklace. Who buys that?
Hmm. All right. Evil Dead 2.
Yep.
The lone survivor of an onslaught of flesh-possessing spirits holes up in a cabin with a group of strangers while the demons continue their attack. I did not expect this to be a retelling of number one. I was very confused at the start.
So
My
was
wife
I.
is like, "Are you sure we're watching the right movie?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm pretty sure this is it."
So this is the thing. I start watching it, right? And now basically the synopsis on Amazon made me believe like Ash returns to the cabin. Like, and I was like, after all these years, I was like, okay, cool. And so the movie just starts, obviously, and they're driving to the cabin. He's like, oh yeah, there's this cabin. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, why is he going back there? And why
Yeah.
is he taking this girl? I was like, what happened? I was like, okay, did the demon at the end that we saw went into his mouth, did it possess him and he's now bringing a new woman back? I was like, this is really weird. Okay. I was like, this seems like the relationship you had with the one in the first one. I was like, but it is a different woman. Okay, because they've recast her. And then I'm like, oh, wait, they are retelling the first one, but without the other characters now. And it's just like, I was Googling shit all for the first like half hour of this movie where I was like, okay, what is going on at the start of Evil Dead 2? Because I was like, I don't get what's going on and what's happening. But, and then, yeah, it just feels like, it felt like a waste of my damn time. Like, and I get that. Okay, it's 6 years later. Now he has a bigger budget. I don't know how he spent an extra $5 million making this one compared to the first one.
No, if you can't see that, you would not watch. No, we're not paying attention. But anyway,
I guess there was just way more effects and just way more stuff.
There's a lot more, a lot more stuff. Like there is
but
mega liters of blood in this.
the first one, yeah, I forgot. This is the one with heaps and heaps of blood
yeah.
shooting out everywhere. Like that's the thing. I feel like I watched 1 and 2 one after the other, and so I feel like my memory of 2 is a bit blurry. I was like, okay, what actually? I'm like, okay, that's right. The new people arrive. She's got her dad. I'm like, okay, that's how I retrace my steps for the second one. But again, I just felt bored where I was just like, oh, it's the same stuff. And now it got to the point in this part where I was like, okay, where he's going crazy in the cabin and all the furniture's laughing and he's like laughing and all this sort of stuff.
It's a great scene.
I bet you guys loved it, but I was just like, man, it was annoying me. And I was like, I don't like the acting. I was like, he's annoying me. He's giving me Nick Cage vibes where I don't like Nicolas Cage.
So this is the problem. So you just don't like good actors.
Yeah.
I know that's me, but I was just like, I'm not enjoying watching this. It feels like, again, this is my weird friend from drama acting. Like I'm watching that weird dude in class. We all know the type of one. That's like he's acting, and it's like, okay, this is this is weird, and it's like overacting, and I don't get it. It's not for me. It's not for me, and
Like
I get that. But
you know that it's meant to be, right? You know he's meant to
this
be.
one I
overacting.
do. This one I do, but it's not entertaining. Watching this, I had the thought where I was like, okay, I was like, if this was Jim Carrey overacts, but he makes it work. Bruce Campbell can't do that.
I disagree.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't think I agree with that either. Like, I did not love this movie. Like, I don't think this movie is that great. I understand why I understand why people like it. I found more to enjoy in this one than the first one, but I think I enjoyed Bruce Campbell. I could see it. Like, I understand. I feel like the tone works in this movie so much better than the first one. The first one, to me, felt like it was trying to be a serious horror movie and was just campy because that's all they could do. Whereas this one feels like it's trying to be campy and kind of hokey. Like, I don't know, you get his girlfriend, his dead girlfriend. I think she has no head at this point. She's like ballet dancing.
Oh my god,
that part was wild. I was like,
no.
I did not expect stop motion.
Like, it's just, there's a whole bunch of just really weird and like very physical comedy. Like, whereas I don't know, there's a very extended scene of him chasing down his possessed hand. Which you'll either love or hate, right? Like, I can totally. My wife totally sat there and rolled her eyes the whole time and said, "This movie sucks." And I'm like, I don't love it, but I can kind of see the appeal. Conan, tell us why we're wrong.
No, it's again similar thing. This movie is the same
thing as the first one.
Much the same. Like we've covered all of it. This is the movie here they always wanted to make. Like, you can, to both your points, you can tell the tone is exactly what they liked. I think the first one has that thing where they're like, we're going to try to make a little horror film. But yeah, part of it is we don't have, we don't have a whole lot to do much else. But also they're just figuring out, whereas this, they're like, no, we like to have fun and we like to put gallons and gallons of blood out. Yeah. It's like, we can't do that seriously. We can just, and these guys would have grown up on like Jason and the Argonaut, those stop motion films of, I can't remember his name, the very famous guy who did it all. But like that whole genre of like stop motion stuff, big in the 50s and 60s films. Now, those are movies that if you watch now, there is very little except for like the appreciation of the craft. You go, oh, that's cool to see. But but if you sort of like that and go, that's charming, whatever, it works. And that's these guys. They're like, they would have loved that stuff. They would have grown up on that. So then they're like, let's do that in horror. It's fun. Again, it's much like, if you don't like the first one, if you don't like the stuff that they're doing, then you're not going to like this. I find it weird that you don't like Bruce Campbell. I think he's like, Ash as a character is actually is decently compelling in this because he's just an idiot.
A completely different character than the first one, obviously.
Yeah. He's very silly. He's a layman. He's the kind of guy, he's an unsuspecting hero, but he's not a hero. He's just an idiot.
Yeah.
And it's like, he's just kind of surviving because that's what you do. But there's
I don't buy it.
And he I love where he like suits up at the end and he's got one hand, but now it's a chainsaw.
It's great, yeah.
Yeah, it's good. Like, I don't know, I kind of appreciate that. It's fun.
All of that stuff is fun. The slam cuts of them doing that, even the idea, right? It's like they somehow, in the space of one night, they figure out how to turn his hand into a attachable chainsaw. Like, no, not how it works. The shotgun has no continuity of how many bullets they fire. It's like, that's whatever. Like, there's a lot of complete nonsense. Like, you don't need to worry about logic or appeal. If you're going to get hung up on that, then that's, I don't know, why are you in a movie about reanimated corpses, right?
For the podcast. But like,
because you made me watch it.
But like, here's the thing. I can appreciate, and like, obviously I wasn't watching this one thinking, oh man, they've really missed the mark of like a serious horror film. I was like, okay, I get what they're going for here. It's camp. I think I just didn't buy it. Like, I just felt, and I know this will sound stupid and I might sound like I'm being a hater, but it just felt like I was watching someone act a lot. Instead of being like, wow, this guy's gone crazy. It wasn't like I believed in Ash. I was like, I'm watching Bruce Campbell act. But that's what it felt like.
I think that's what you're meant to feel. I don't think you're meant to feel like this is this character Ash going mad. So I think you're meant to feel this is Bruce Campbell trying to be ridiculous. So like Ryan mentioned,
film, then
I think if you put Jim Carrey in that same position, you're gonna feel like this is Jim Carrey being stupid. It's not.
I feel like
not him going crazy.
Have you ever seen?
Like, man, this dude's weird. Yes, I do. And Ace Ventura is a character.
No, it's Jim Carrey playing a character. Yeah. You go to a Jim Carrey movie for Jim Carrey. You're not like, this complex detective. He's like, no, this is Jim
But he
Carrey saying
pulls it off, though. I buy it. I buy that character is this really weird character. This one just feels like I'm acting so crazy. Like,
Do you-
I did not get that feel. Like, I get what you're saying, where it's like, oh, I'm so random. Look at me. But I never felt like that. I never felt like that in this movie. Like,
yeah, okay.
Yeah,
like, did I feel like he was trying really hard to be really stupid? Yes, but I would feel the same way about Jim Carrey. I'd feel the same way about Jack Black. Name any of those really physical actors, and I'd feel the exact same way.
Yeah. Do you think that you were like? I feel like it sounds like you were burned out. I'm not trying to dismiss your opinion or be like, oh, you didn't get it there. But I'm like, were you burned out on the first, and you just like, I don't like these movies. And it comes in
watching these back to back is a mistake.
Yeah.
Yes, and I kind of watched them back to back to back.
Yeah, like
no, but here's the thing, like, and I'll get into my thoughts on the third one afterwards. But like, that could possibly be it. Again, I was glad this was only an hour and 20. If these were 2-hour movies, man, this would have been a rough ride. But
it'd be a slog.
But like, that could play a part in it. But I came out of it being like, I will never watch these again as long as I live. Like, I know that for a fact. I will never choose to watch these films again unless this podcast takes off and we decide to revisit old things and I'm forced to do it. Like, I'm like, it's just not for me. And I'm weird like that. There's some stuff like, you know, Nicolas Cage, I find, is one of them actors that I find that he's overacting in stuff, and I don't buy it. I don't like that.
You mean Oscar winner Nicolas Cage, right?
Oscar winner Nicolas Cage.
I just want to make sure we say Oscar winner. This guy who can't act is an Oscar.
Has Bruce Campbell won an Oscar?
No, of course not. But that doesn't.
How has this movie got 80% as well? Like, I don't get it, man.
Yeah,
Sorry, did you enjoy this movie more than the first one?
I don't know. There's
a
part of me that
were you watching videos on your phone the whole time? Like,
yeah.
For the third one, I was, but I feel like if I was to, I feel like maybe the first one I liked more because I could be like, okay, it's early Sam Raimi and it's got bad acting and stuff like that.
It's a pity vote,
but it's for its time. It's like it's trying to do this weird stuff. This one I can tell though is not for me. This one I can see, okay, I can get why some people, if this is what they're into and they watch this as a kid. At the end of this film, I said to my wife, I was like, I'm sure the people that watch this when they're kid, this is the film they remember when they're like, oh my God, like Mighty Ducks for me and Grana. Like, where it's like, oh wow, that
it's a bit different,
awesome.
But anyway.
You know, but like that film is awesome. You know, like that they have fond memories of and they can go back and watch. And yeah, if I'd watched this when I was like with my brothers when I was a kid, and it's like, oh my God, it's gory, but it's not like scary that would keep me up at night. It's kind of silly and it's gory. It could be a film that as a kid I would have really enjoyed. But as a functioning adult, I don't enjoy it.
Functioning?
Well, sometimes functioning.
Somewhat functioning.
Living and breathing, yes.
I don't mean to be a hater. At the end, I just am saying this film isn't for me. So it's
dumb to be like, these movies are important and you should love them, and the fact that you don't makes you bad. Like, I don't know, I'm not that opinion either. And I don't, like I said, I didn't like super enjoy these movies. This one I appreciated more than the first one for, you know, there's a few good scenes in this one, like sawing her, I think it's his girlfriend, her head in half, like it's in the vice, and he just gets the chainsaw, and there's just like liters of blood.
Just blood going everywhere.
That's kind of fun.
Yeah. No, this one, I'd put this one over the first one, if I was to review it.
Well, now you're changing your tune. I just don't know. I don't know if you know what you did. I just don't even know if you saw these movies.
If I was to rewatch one, I would rewatch the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, I can see the direction that this was going, but this one really is not for me. I'm not a fan of that campy, so much blood and that. And that's what this one is all about, right?
Yeah.
And it's just not for me. So this one's
that's
probably a better made film. Not for me, though.
Yeah. Like, I think horror is probably the only genre that has that super divisive thing where, you know, you might get one horror fan who's like, I love horror, but I hate torture porn. And so I cannot watch any of those movies at all. I loathe them. It's like, but they're all horror. How can you not? And that's, horror comedy, like camp horror comedy is a specific flavor. And if you don't like that, I just think this movie's like for me, this movie is really fun. Like it's almost more than horror. It's just like it's almost the third one becomes a full-on adventure movie. The second one is like just kind of I just kind of find it exciting. I'm not saying it's like, I'm not a five-star guy. I'm not like, man, you have to love this movie because again, I can see the not the opposite of the appeal. I can see why you would be turned off it. But it's just like absolute nonsense for an hour and 20 minutes. It's just like he's trying to chase his hand down, and then he's got to get his chainsaw, and then he sees him in the mirror, and then like the guy in the mirror comes out.
Mm.
I don't know. I feel like this one kind of flew by for me. I thought it was very kind of just exhilarating because, like I was saying before, I felt the energy. To me, Sam Raimi, I think between this, he's made a movie called Crime Wave. So he's made two films. He's becoming a thing. He's got money. He just kind of knows what he's doing. And I think they're just having an absolute blast. And that to me translates like, I don't know if there's any other movies kind of like this specifically. There are movies that have taken inspiration, sure, but it's like, this is one of those things like, this is just in Sam Raimi's head. I don't think anyone else could do this kind of thing the way he does it. And I don't know, that in and of itself has an appeal, in my opinion. But yeah, if it doesn't work for you, it doesn't work for you, right? Like, no way you can convince yourself or enjoy it and be like, no amount of craftsmanship or charm or anything else is going to make you like it if it's just incompatible.
Yeah. They definitely toned down the rapey tree in this one.
Yeah, they kind of. I don't know if there's any controversy about it, but it is interesting they removed.
I mean, it got
that,
banned
right?
in a few countries, so maybe.
Do you know if this one got banned? Because speaking of the blood, like I was looking into the reason why there's like random blood colors. Like at one point the blood goes black like ink. At one point it's green. That was intentionally to get around censorship because some countries couldn't have that much blood, so they just changed the colors in scenes. Which again to me is like that's cool. Like that makes me enjoy it more because it's just randomly changes color. I'm like, why would they do that? And then you look into the story behind
anything it. On, like the second one being banned. So
yeah, okay. It was 86, wasn't it? So I guess maybe people are just chilled out by then.
Used to it, yeah.
Or 87 even, yeah.
All right, should we move on to Army of Darkness?
Sure.
A sardonic hardware store clerk is accidentally transported to 1300 AD, where he must retrieve the Necronomicon and battle an army of the dead so he can return home.
Luke, stop making those faces like you're going to take a big dump on this movie, all right?
It's funny. This movie, I feel like this movie is like, this is the one people quote.
Yes,
and all that stuff, but
much more.
People don't like this. Like, this movie is not as highly regarded as the other ones or anything like that. Like, I don't know. It's kind of funny to me.
You're right. This is kind of the black sheep of the film, but it's the quoted one. It's the
Well, he actually has a lot of dialogue in this movie too.
Yeah. So I just want to mention Ray Harryhausen is the guy who did did things like Clash of the Titans, Jason and the Argonauts, those puppets, because again his influence is even bigger on this one, where there is an entire skeleton army battle at the end. Luke, you've seen a movie called Lord of the Rings, right?
I knew you were going to say.
Do you feel like Peter Jackson watched this and was like, "That's it, that's cinema. I need to," because that
100%.
Yeah.
So,
okay, good.
This is the thing, right? That final battle, there is at least 4 or 5 shot for shot.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, that is Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
Like the way that skeleton fell off that bridge and Uruk-hai falls off that bridge in the same camera shot. And Peter Jackson, like Griner said, bad taste, all that sort of stuff. Obviously, I think would have friggin' loved these films.
Yeah.
And I was watching, I was like, this is Helm's Deep.
Yeah.
This is Helm's Deep if, like, again, the weird kid in drama, me in drama, was like, I'm going to make Lord of the Rings film, since I love Lord of the Rings and I've watched Helm's Deep. And obviously this came out 10 years before Two Towers. Yes, I can there's no way it hasn't influenced the way Peter Jackson filmed a few of the scenes in Two Towers. Like in Helm's Deep especially. Look, so coming into the first 20 minutes of this film, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be the one I like. I was like, you watch. I was like, this one has the low. I came into it being like, man, I hated those two films. And this is the one that people dislike. Like, it's got the low score. I was like, oh no. The first 20 minutes, I was like, I'm kind of into it. I like this thing that he's, trapped in this completely different world. It's fantasy, but it's mixed with him, and he's got a chainsaw, all this sort of stuff. I'm like, I can kind of buy into the camp then a bit more. Where I'm like, okay, this is like interesting. Then it loses me. It loses
Was
me.
it the wind? Was it the windmill? Yep.
The windmill completely
the
lost
mirror,
me.
the mirror world, little men.
Like
Yeah.
with
Little
with the little
princess.
men, I paused it and I turned to my wife and I was like, I am pissed off that I'm watching this movie. Like I'm not even joking. It is
Oh,
honestly the most annoyed I've been since joining the podcast about watching a film where I was like, why am I
goodness me.
spending my night watching this film? I was like, this is horrible. I was like, I do not enjoy this. I was like, I was like, this film is annoying me. I was like, I wanted to just press fast forward to the next, like to keep fast forwarding through scenes. I'm like, okay, I can skip 2 or 3 minutes here, surely. I can skip 2 or 3 minutes here, surely. Because I was like, I want to finish this film because the windmill and the whole middle part of this film completely lost me to the point where towards the end I was just like, I'm over it. I'm ready to be done with this trilogy. But there's potential in this film where I was like, okay, and then all the Helm's Deep stuff towards the end, where I was like, okay, I'm kind of along for the ride again. It's silly, and we've got skeletons running around, and I was like, but I'm kind of more into this than the other stuff, and the over the top gore. I still, I'd maybe put this one as higher than the other two, but the windmill and everything about that trip to insanity or whatever the hell was going on, again, my fault. I probably looked down at my phone and was scrolling through something. Had no idea why he was in the windmill all of a sudden, and then I just
There's no
was
reason.
like,
Yeah,
I was just like, what is going on? I was like, I have
logic has no
no
place in
idea what is happening in this film right now, and why there's all these little men running around and like versions of him. But it was annoying me so bad. I was like, I'm not enjoying this film. I'm not enjoying this scene, this acting. Ah, yeah,
And
not
one
not
one
for
of
me.
those little men turns into the main bad guy. I forgot about that.
Oh my
It's
god.
that's
it's
yes,
so
yeah.
strange.
It's versing himself. That disdain
Sorry,
you
that's my
feel,
rant.
that disdain is how I felt watching Mighty Ducks.
Oh god.
Every single minute of those
So
movies.
hard.
So I just want you to. I feel like now we can empathize with each
Okay.
other.
Fair enough.
Yeah, again, it's the same thing though. It's like these movies are just like completely incompatible with you, and that's fine. That's just how it is. Like,
Yeah.
there is a I think there is a generational difference where I can't imagine. I'm not. I can't say anyone, but I can't. I imagine very few people of sort of our age or younger would watch these and truly be like, "Those were amazing. I love them." I
Yeah.
feel like there would be an element that would be like, "Those were super quirky and weird." And I can see any of these movies having a second life through like TikTok shorts, like weird bits getting memed or something. And they kind of already do, like bits will circle around every now and then. But yeah, like these movies are a top relic of the time. And this movie is almost more so like they do not make movies like this. You could not make a movie with like a horror franchise where a dude goes back in time to a medieval setting, kind of blends horror, but it's really more of like just an action adventure film.
Yeah.
Have a
Not
puppet,
horror, this one really.
no,
Yeah.
have a
No.
puppet battle in the last scene. Like it's completely sort of just atypical. It's so strange. And so this kind of feel like is a movie made for the fans, which is ironic because a lot of them didn't like it. But this is
Yeah.
the one where it's like if you're into if you vibe with Sam Raimi and Ash and this whole thing, you should like this sort of. But if you don't, yeah, it's kind of there's a sunken cost at that point. If you're not into it already, you're definitely not going to like this.
Yeah.
Did you enjoy it, Grona?
I'm similar to you, Luke. Like I'm like, I don't know why people hate this movie. I'm kind of into it. He's given a speech about his boomstick, and he's like,
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of into this. And then yeah, the windmill scene. I'm just like, this mirror, little men. Screw this. This is the hand in the wall all over again, but 10 times worse and 10 times more annoying.
Yeah.
But then he like builds a robotic medieval hand and is talking about alloys and stuff. And I'm just like, I'm kind of into this. This is kind of fun.
Yeah.
And then Skeleton Helm's Deep. I was like, hell yeah, this is ambitious as hell.
Yeah. Like you are right. Those scenes, those parts where you go sort of full bizarro with the little men. It's just like that's the worst part of the movie. You could cut that out and it still works. I mean, it'd be a very short film, but it's definitely just meant to be like this is where the character goes mad. What do we do now? Let's try that. But this one, even more than the others, completely sort of disregards any logic. Like the one that gets me is the romance subplot. It's like
Yeah.
he has. I think he even talks to her. She comes in. And he's just like, "What are you doing in here?" And then they just start kissing. It's like
Yeah.
you just have a romance plot.
And
That's
you
what you
get
do.
like a full like Mass Effect like romance scene, of like
Yeah,
the fades in and fades out. The
That's right.
music starts playing, and it's like
it's
there's a fire in the background, and it's like
I think again,
yeah,
it's kind of parody where it's like this is just what
Yep.
these movies have. So it's like we put one in there. It's just what you do to humanize the character. They don't actually care
and
about
then
doing that. It's
no,
just,
and then he's like, that was just pillow talk, baby.
like,
God.
I don't know. I really like Ash in this movie. I think he's really funny because of that. He's like you get the backstory where he's an S-Mart
Yeah.
employee, and he's kind
Yeah.
of like he's quoting the slogans to these people. Like he's kind of dumb enough to be like, you don't know if he likes his job, but he's loyal to his job or something. It's like okay, it's like, or it's ingrained in his head,
Yep.
and
Yep.
yeah, he drops lines like that. He's like, "Does his pillow talk, baby?" At the very end when he's like, "Hail to the king, baby." He's just he's the complete aloof moron who
Yep.
is kind of wily enough to survive and always get on top of things, but he's just an absolute moron. So I find that really endearing. I think it's really fun.
Did you hate Bruce Campbell in this again, Luke?
The windmill part I did, but like Conan just said, Ash as a character, this one I enjoyed him more than the other two films. Where I was like, okay, it's this, and I don't know if it is the setting, if it's away from that horror thing, or what, but it felt more like it was confident in what it was doing, and it was just doing this very unique thing. Like I haven't, you don't see someone like going back in time and dealing with fantasy stuff where that often, like it's a very unique thing, and I don't know that adds to it where it is this like fish out of water story as much as that is overdone in other ways, but like makes it a bit more fun to be campy and a bit surreal where, and yeah, I don't know, I liked the whole thing about him being a like former retail staff member at S-Mart and stuff like that, and that just added to it. But yeah, and then you get the class. Like I knew what the ending was going to be. Like the second he was going back to sleep, I was like, "You watch, it's gonna be some Planet of the Apes stuff when he wakes up." And then yeah, that's how it ends. So
Yeah. Did you guys know there was a show made about this, like called Ash vs. the Evil Dead? Have you heard of that?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Is
It's
it
funny.
this setting as well?
Yeah, well, no. So I watched the first season of that when it came out. It's all modern day, so it follows like 20 years later, but it follows this S-Mart ending, so they do exist in the real world. I think he's still an employee there.
it's
But
got
I caught it.
99% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I get like people who watch the show are fans, and like I think people like appreciate. Like I say, I think people do appreciate the craft behind it and the tone and stuff. So I'd be interested. Like it feels, from what I remember, it feels different to these. You might actually like that because it's a little bit more like
Probably more
I don't
modern,
know.
right? Like,
It's a lot more modern, and it's actually like it's the whole. It's followed. It has two lead characters who are younger, and they're kind of like, why do we have to be with this idiot? But he's the one who knows how to kill him. Like
There's
I
3
don't,
seasons.
I don't know if I'd recommend it to you, but I feel like if you
Oh,
give it a go, you might enjoy something about it more than the movies.
yeah.
But
I'm
yeah, I don't
gonna
know. It's
take a skip on it, but
you'll
yeah.
pass. What about the remake slash sequel, and then the sequel to that standalone
So
sequel to that? Have you guys seen those, or do you have any interest in those?
I
no,
haven't.
because we talked about this the other month. Like Evil Dead Rise only came out this year, didn't it?
Hmm.
Yes, yeah.
And so
It's
yeah, it's also got 84%, but I don't trust scores
well,
anymore.
well. Here's the thing: I haven't seen either of those movies, but when the original remake came out, it was kind of controversial because it was completely different. Like it's a very serious take on it. So it's actually like what would happen if Evil Dead was a true horror movie, and
Hmm.
I think same. I think it's the same deal with Rise. I think Rise is again like this is an actual horror film. So it's kind of this. It's just this strange franchise, like
Yeah.
why franchise? It's kind of the one that you wouldn't expect to be one because they clearly have no through line after Army of Darkness. It's like
Mhm.
the only thing connecting anything about them really besides the tone is Ash. So then to make one that's like not the same tone and doesn't have Ash, I'm like, what? It's very strange to me. But it also speaks to kind of the longevity and the I don't know the appeal of these movies that they're like you say that people are like, yeah, I like Cabin in Woods. I like that stuff.
I like Cabin in the Woods.
But you don't. Yeah, okay.
I liked that.
But you don't like the silliness of these.
Apparently, Bruce Campbell is Ash Williams in the Evil Dead 2013 remake.
I think it's like a cameo appearance.
It
Yeah.
might be a cameo. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think there's any real relevance, but I would have to. I haven't seen it, but I don't know. I like the Army of Darkness. I think it's cool that they turn in the dark setting for like daylight. You know, it's just kind of cool seeing them be like, this is all in the sand and the desert
Yeah.
and in day. And it's like it's a completely different sort of palette and shtick from what they were doing. And it's cool to just see them like, can we do this? Can we handle it? And for the most part, they do. But again, it's just if you're on its level, it works. If you're not, it's not. But
Yeah.
All right. How do we rank them?
all right, this will be interesting. I think you can't deny Evil Dead 2 is the
Yeah.
best in terms of film, but also just like legacy, influence, everything. Like that's the one people revere. That feels like the one that is truly the movie they wanted to make.
Yep.
And I think that's the one that is
So
I think
my
it's better.
ranking is 3-1-2.
Wow.
What?
Wow.
No. What's wrong with you?
Yeah, controversial. But yeah,
3-1, like your problem with number 2 is the tone, and then 3 is that tone on steroids. You're like, that's the best one though.
but it's
like, what is
easier to
that?
swallow. You cut out that windmill scene. I don't mind the third one.
Mm.
Like,
Okay.
like legitimately. While the second one, I feel like 70 minutes of it is the windmill for me.
Not quite, but sure.
Nah, I think it's 2-3-1. I think
Yeah,
maybe 2-1-3, but probably 2-3-1. I think for me.
I don't know. I agree with that. Like 3 has a lot. Just 3 has the great lines. 3 has the boomstick. It just has a lot more fun. Like I had more fun in 3. I think overall because it was just so sort of like you're sort of set up for number 2 when you see 1, right? So when everything goes gonzo, you're like, yeah, I was expecting this. 3 though, I was not expecting any of it. And just seeing them take it all, but that was really, I had a lot of fun with 3 because it was just weird. Just nothing like it. I think 2's got to be the best. Look, you're crazy. You're crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What can I tell you?
All right. Let's put Luke out of his misery. Let's move on.
Yep.
Next fortnight, finishing off Spooktober with the Conjuring trilogy.
That's right. Conjuring 2, and The Devil Made Me Do It.
Yeah. I was scared, and then I watched the first one last night, and I am no longer scared. But let's not get ahead of ourselves.
Wait, you watched the first one?
Yeah.
I'm so excited to talk. Oh, wow.
We'll
Wait,
talk
what's
about
the
it.
third one called? The Devil.
The Conjuring, The Devil Made
Never
Me
made
Do
me
It.
do it.
Oh, okay. I thought you said the devil all the time. And I was like, wait a minute, what? I was like, the one with Tom Holland.
Yeah.
Have you seen that?
It's a twist reveal at the end.
Yeah.
It's Tom Holland the whole time.
He's the nun.
Yeah. We're not going into any of the extended universe. We're not doing We're not talking about Annabelle's or the nuns here. It's just the core 3. So
It's
that's
kind of
worth
wild
noting.
how those movies have spun out to be this horror cinematic universe.
Yeah, it is. It's whack, but I'm keen.
I'm keen for Spooktober to be over, to be honest, but that's just me.
So am I.
God.
Because it's funny, I even watched a horror movie or another horror movie this week, or last week, Talk to Me, which again is sort of conjuring the dead with incantations or whatever.
Yep.
In a weird way. So yeah, it's the spirit of the month.
It really is.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us for the good, the bad, and the worst. This podcast was brought to you by a little book Conan Clark wrote called The Taste of Iron. It's very good. Give it a read. Pick it up on Amazon.
Sequel's coming before the end of the year. So.
Wow. You heard it here
Ooh.
first. That's a
The
scoop.
end of the year is 2 months
Everyone,
away.
it's a scoop.
Okay.
If you enjoyed this podcast, please give us a rating on iTunes and Spotify. It'll help us out greatly.
Like and subscribe.
Yeah, like and subscribe. Thanks for joining us, and we'll catch you next time.
Peace.
Ruby.
Hail to the king.